Welcome to the Polyverse. Tonight we have another amazing tale to open your eyes and expand your world. Before we begin, please subscribe and ring the bell to be notified for more great stories. The Polyverse presents an excerpt from Civilized. The darkness of space stretched infinitely in all directions. One could look out any viewport and see the same shimmering black velvet, broken only occasionally by brief flashes as a celestial body was passed. Planet-side cruises are exhilarating. They have an intrinsic beauty all their own. One could find creatures swimming alongside to pass a measure of luck to passengers and crew alike. Oceans have crisp winds laden with sea salt to invigorate all that walk topside. Lounging in the sun can rejuvenate even the most weary of souls on their short trips of a few weeks to a few months at most. Any monotony that might develop could be alleviated in one of the many exotic ports of call. Interstellar cruises, on the other hand, have none of that. Just parsecs upon parsecs of empty nothingness. Even with FTL, or faster-than-light travel, it took months, usually years, to cross the void. That meant a lot of time to kill. Even planet-side cruises have permanent position for entertainment coordinators. However, with nothing to do and everyone, all 7,000 passengers and crew, looking towards Zadra's department for a break from the tedium and blaming her for the humdrums of life, she was going mad with frustration. For 3 cruises, more than a decade, this girl approaching middle age had struggled with the constant conflict of what is possible and is it even entertaining. Every morning, checking the messages from the night before was like some kind of misogynistic or masochistic orgy. Always a complaint about this or that, and most could not even be solved. Worst of all, her inbox had become the catch-all for insults and other colorful statements that could not really be understood. This morning's self-mutilation had a silver lining, however. A band making the trip had a great idea for a battle of the bands. Zadra hoped that this would bear fruit, as she was out of useful ideas herself. She waited in one of the smaller lounges at the bottom of a ventral section, wondering how a new stain appeared in the corner. She was supposed to meet with a representative from the band that offered the idea, but it was getting close to the time for morning meeting.
"This had better be worth it if I'm late,"
she groaned, glancing at her wrist chrono again. At that moment, the automatic sliding door whooshed aside to allow the entrance of a young girl.
"Good morning, are you Alexis Valkyrie?"
Zadra asked regarding this pup of a girl. She looked to have just barely graduated high school, if indeed she had even attended that declining institution. Her shiny light orange fur was a stark contrast to Zadra's own matte brown, prematurely thinning fur. Her long furs had just barely started to grow down her back. The youngling wore the current fashion of the ship's youth passengers, loose-fitting tan long shorts just covering her haunches, leaving plenty for a young man's mind to play with. Her short-sleeved blouse was light green, and her unders perfectly supported her 4 average memories. She didn't even bother to wear shoes. It was understandable, as they were more than a bit uncomfortable. The girl smiled pleasantly and accepted the forepaw shake of her elder.
"Yes, and you must be Zadra Stone? Pleased to meet you."
The pair took their seats at the table Zadra had been occupied to get down to business.
"Well, Miss Valkyrie, please, Zadra, I'm not an old lady. It's Alexis. Please, Alexis, Miss Stone, I'm bound by protocol. Please, tell me that's why you're wearing, well, that?"
It was true. Her ship's uniform was rather lame. Faded blue, too short pants, not short enough to be long shorts, but not really pants either. Her aged bright blue polo did not complement her less than average memories. Then again, few things could. Worst of all, her black combat boots that Reg said should be shiny. She was lucky if they were ever even blackened. Yes, Zadra barely resisted the urge to roll her eyes.
That's why I dress like this. How about we discuss irrelevant things?
Alexis shrugged. As far as she was concerned, that's what they were doing.
Your call, ma'am.
This was what was called a rendezvous lounge, just big enough to have a few alcoves spaced out so passengers and sometimes crew could meet and have a little bit of privacy. Zadra hoped no rendezvous would happen while she was here. It was bad enough she didn't have any luck with the opposite gender, but being reminded of it every day just wasn't nice.
So, you're the ringleader of this little battle of the band things? Well, more sacrificial lamb, really.
Alexis shrugged.
We didn't really know how the staff would take the idea. To be honest, it wasn't even our idea. Some passengers were watching us practice and decided to put together an impromptu show, and they liked it so much they told us that some other bands were doing the same thing. Your message did say that there were others, and that they had already signed up. How did you get so many so fast without ever even being officially endorsed? That's the thing, see. It wasn't even that hard. They came to us, like I said, sacrificial lamb. As you are aware, some of us have been using lounges like this as private stages. I was not aware of it. That does explain a few things. Oh shit, are we in trouble? No, just from now on, make sure you clean up after yourselves.
She quickly calmed the girl.
I'm going to take this idea to the captain. With any luck, we can put together a little battle by the end of the week. Sounds great.
Alexis jumped in to hug Zadra.
As soon as the band gets here, I'll let them know.
Zadra's wrist chrono went off, and she carefully excised the youth.
Oh shit, I have the morning staff meeting, like now.
Alexis glanced at her own wrist chrono.
Morning? Really? Well, good luck, Miss Stone, and thanks,
she called out as the elder left the lounge. Zadra walked out of the lounge like she was walking on air. Nothing good had happened to her in such a long time. It was exhilarating. She had to hurry to get to the meeting on time. It was faster to go 4 down instead of 2, but civilized people didn't go 4 down. She was in such a good mood, however, she couldn't stop herself from lowering to all fours. Her smile grew as she was off like a shot, ambling on all fours like a child, around a corner, and she didn't even notice that she had ran over Kestra.
Well, that was unpleasant.
Kestra snarled as she got up and dusted herself off. When 2 down, she was tall, 2.5 meters, one of the tallest people on the ship. Quite intimidating, especially with her platinum white fur, pinstriped with epic black. Meticulously maintained, she still bore the sheen of youth, even with her long fur sprouting a good distance from below her shoulders. She was dressed in one of her best light green skirts, and even though she hated wearing them, civilized people wore shoes. She had on her best candy apple green slippers. As the first oracle of Ralsbro, old speak for way of the path, she had to be seen as completely civilized and above reproach. She had to give the appearance of having all the answers. The wide corridor was momentarily empty. People had begun avoiding her on principle. Not surprising, as religion, or more specifically the belief in higher power, had fallen into disrepute in the centuries after FTL. Understandable, but not welcome. If she could not establish a base of power before the ship arrived planetside, she would never be able to spread her new religion. As she approached a 4-way intersection, she slowed. Ambushing a person around a corner was still one of her favorite methods of eliciting listeners. The wall panels were soft, matte pastels, designed to blend into the background of the scene. Every so often, there would be a generic picture or a fake plant to break the monotony. She spotted her latest victim. Light red fur, long furs beginning to sprout from the nape of her neck. Loose white shirt and khakis, she was oblivious to everything as she approached the door to the promenade. Quickly, Kestra stealthed up to the tween.
Have you given any thought to the direction of your life?
She suddenly announced, appearing beside the girl. Rory nearly jumped out of her fur. All the passengers had heard of the snow tigress zealot, but she had assumed the stories about her sudden appearances were far exaggerated, like any other tale told. All she wanted out of this cruise was to get to the end, so that she could ply her trade on the fringe world of Granada. She was a proud graduate of Central University, and she could not be bothered to believe in anything that could not be empirically proven. As she turned to regard the other, she started,
Would you kindly shove it, lady? I believe in facts, and the facts is you are freaking huge.
Kestra smiled.
I have been told this before, sister. I am not your sister.
All confidence gone as she backed towards the door, hoping her bladder would hold.
There is no conclusive evidence of a god.
Kestra shrugged.
I've never mentioned a deity, but while we're on the subject, there may not be proof for, but neither is there proof against, a god or gods for that matter.
Rory fell through the doorway onto the promenade, where, as luck would have it, two of the bigger security goons waited. They had matching black fur and shiny badges. They were probably littermates, and they immediately stepped in to help the cute tween. They were not as big as Kestra, but they were trained in hand-to-hand combat, and they had nightsticks.
Security?
Kestra muttered, not liking the idea of a physical confrontation.
I'm not...
4 paws on the bulkhead, Goon 1 declared.
Bulk what?
Kestra backed into the wall.
That thing you're leaning against, Tigress,
returned Goon 2. With the great white one subdued, Alexis absently shoved the pamphlet into her pocket and walked on.
What? That giant white freak! She is a weirdo,
accepted Selna as she looked on the growing crowd at the door she was going to use to get to the passage.
No reason to kick her white striped ass while I'm trying to get to the gym. Oh, damn. I'm going to have to go around.
Finally making it to the gym, she took in a lungful of the crisp, cold air that had the aftertaste of blood, sweat, and tears. Her light brown fur bristled with the pent-up energy she hadn't had a chance to unleash this week. Her loose-fitting gray sweats were still clean, but they would soon be drenched in sweat, like they were supposed to be. This was one of the smaller gyms. Only a few machines, weights, and the small area covered with mats for wrestling or whatever. On the mats was a sight she hadn't expected. Loose, shiny black shorts, tight sleeveless white shirt, stretching nicely across his intense abdomen, even with the gray. Perhaps because of the way it peeked through the black furs that had lost the sheen of youth, yet now with the glint of sweet sweat. Coffin moved with restrained power and precision beyond that of a master. He was so intent on perfection that Selna didn't even notice she was being drawn towards him. As soon as she walked into the room, he watched her out of the corner of his eye. She was young, and if she was coming to really work out, obviously virile. Even her exercise unders failed to erode the sensuality of her ample memories. A gym was no place to pick up a date. He did his best to ignore her. It took all his concentration to continue his forms without lust-induced errors. Yet every time he did lose himself and glance over, she was closer. Now she was standing on the edge, in a trance and about to step into his little dojoette.
See something you like, you can always ask to see more.
He hoped she didn't take it the wrong way. Suddenly, out of her mind, Selna was shocked to notice just where she was.
If I wanted it, and that is a big if, I could just take it, old man.
She hoped she sounded nonchalant. A smile crossed his snout as he turned to her.
You are welcome to try, youngling.
Selna was not one to back down from the challenge. She eyed the old man, liking everything she saw. She stepped onto the mat and began some light stretching, hoping to distract her already warm and loose competitor. Now they stood 2 meters apart, face to face. They slowly bowed and then came up in sparring stances. Coffin, being older, bigger, and far more powerful, took a low defensive stance. Selna, smaller, lighter, and more agile, got on her toes to assume a lanky, almost fluid stance. Arms outstretched, she orbited her slowly turning foe, coming ever closer. As soon as her right forepaw touched his, she knocked it out of the way and began a flurry of punches and knife hands at his face and torso. He was faster than she thought, and managed to at least deflect all her blows with what looked like ease. Granted, he was not as fast as her, but he was fast enough. He lowered himself and turned the long way around to sweep her legs from underneath her. She cartwheeled over him and backflipped to the edge of the mat. Almost defying physics, she kicked off a pole to turn all her momentum back at him and spun to put the back of her heel to his snout. Just in time, he caught her hind paw and twisted to force her to redirect her energy again to avoid a broken leg. She was on the ground, recovering her sense of balance. Coffin jumped over her with the intention of putting his elbow to her gut. She rolled away quickly and bound up with excitement at finally having a worthy adversary. Presently, they orbited each other, exchanging blows with all four paws. Faster and faster they pushed themselves, trying to find the weakness in their foes' defenses. As part of an unspoken agreement, neither picked up any one of the weapons Coffin had brought to train with. That did not mean they were opposed to using all the floor space of the gym in a cinematic fight scene. Over, under, and around machines, weight racks, and poles, they just couldn't stop. This was way too much fun. As they fought, they discussed the reasons they had chose to abandon civilization in favor of a fringe world.
Spec Ops? Really?
Selna panted.
You guys usually end up dead, not retired.
I got lucky. That, and I'm very good.
Coffin ducked behind a pole that Selna took a chunk out of with her elbow.
You know a thing or two as well, it seems.
5th Q Grandmaster, Bei Kung Fu, all styles.
So young. That's impressive.
Coffin complimented.
Why lead it?
It's gotten a bit too stylized. Besides, I couldn't find a challenge there. I'm hoping to establish a new school and train on the fringes like it's supposed to be.
They finally collapsed against a mirror, panting and covered in sweat.
Are you sure you're retired?
Selna gasped happily. It had been too long since she was challenged.
You should have seen me in my prime, he chuckled. I might have been a good match for you.
Selna grunted.
You would have easily spanked me. I barely kept up as it was.
They turned to regard each other, and immediately began to drown in each other's eyes.
You don't give yourself enough credit, Sal. You have all the skills of a master. They just need to be caressed.
Unconsciously, they moved closer together.
And I'm sure you're just the guy to massage it out of me,
she smiled. By now, they were a few centimeters from each other. Their warm breath tickled each other's short furs. Suddenly, they realized what was happening and hurriedly backed up. After a moment of uncomfortable silence, Coffin gathered his assorted practice weapons. Selna attempted to straighten up her sweats.
Well,
she started, standing up.
It's getting late. It was indeed a pleasure.
Selna's stomach growled.
I guess it's about that time.
Coffin shrugged.
Yeah, my plan was to get some chow after a light workout.
I had a similar plan.
Coffin shrugged.
Care to join me?
We really should bathe.
Wouldn't want the other passengers
complaining about the stench.
I'm 20 decks up.
I'm down the hall.
Well, it does take women longer.
You could come to my place?
Wouldn't want to impose.
Trust me, you wouldn't be.
We could order room service.
What the hell are we waiting for?
Selna nearly growled as they made their way for the door. 4 down in excitement, they tore off through the passage, barely restraining the urge to rip off each other's clothes in the running foreplay.
Oh, sorry, lots crazy. A couple ran me over.
Roran talked into his flip-com as he continued down the hall.
Look, Franco, I'm a mechanic, not a drink dispenser fixer.
Calicos really didn't have a good color to dress in. Not that it mattered. Roran always sought to avoid any public appearance, preferring to stay on the serviceways, away from people in general. His uniform was just a set of almost ratty gray coveralls, of which he had 5. At least this set was clean. He had even shined his uncomfortable-as-hell boots out of something akin to boredom. He had been working the bowels of the ship since he graduated high school more than a decade ago. He knew how to deal with the tedium, but still, being alone sometimes got to him. At least keeping up a 50-year-old FTL ship was a secure job, at least until the decom in 20 more years. too far in the future to worry about.
Look, Roar,
The closest thing he had to a friend continued.
you can fix anything. I've seen it. Just take a look at it for me. If you can't fix it, I'll personally route the replace refurb request myself.
Roran sighed and stroked the bridge of his snout in frustration.
Look, Frankel, it's not that I don't want to try.
I know it's approaching ship change, but if we leave it, it will be at least an hour before the next guys get to it.
The maintenance dispatcher pleaded.
And you know what we've been dealing with, having problem with passengers trying to fix things on their own.
Oh, fine. Gets me out of that damn double turnover anyway.
Thanks, man, you're a pal.
Just make sure you fill out the overtime forms this time.
He snapped his comm shut and reversed his course to the promenade. The promenade was the largest section of the ship, going from the bottom of the passenger section all the way to the top. Up the middle round a grand double helix stairwell connecting all the levels with catwalks and multiple stores and stalls to sell all manner of random stuff that a passenger or crew might need. The smells of the restaurants caressed his nostrils as he made his way to the grand ballroom, now being used as a large buffet for one of the floundering passenger mixers. The huge sliding brushed glass doors parted to lose a cacophony of hubbub. Roran straightened his coveralls as best he could, sighed defeatedly, and walked in search of the broken drink dispenser. Skirting the edges, he scanned the barcodes on each of the machine backs, looking for the one that auto-sent an aid request. After all, there were only two ways for a trouble call to be made: a passenger report or an auto claim.
Wait a tick.
He checked the auto request registry.
This was a passenger request. That means my port scan is useless.
He put the small device back in his pocket and took out a flipcom to ask if the claim had a machine number, or he would have to figure it out. Then he noticed across the aisle bare hind paws sticking out from underneath a table.
Roar, man, you fixed it already?
No, Frank, listen. Was another main tech dispatched to this?
After the sound of typing, Frankel returned a negative.
No? Why? I'll let you know when I figure it out.
He crossed the aisle and tapped the hind paws of the would-be main tech.
Hey, buddy, what you doing?
After some silence, there was some fidgeting as the individual wiggled out.
Well, I'm trying to get this thing working.
He stood facing the drink machine. He was a middle-aged man by the look of his trimmed mutton chops working their way down his chin. He was dressed simply in tan long shorts that matched his fur and polo.
How about you let ship's company take care of that?
He stopped fidgeting with a set of tools and turned to regard his accuser.
Called in a little bit ago, but he did show up. Quick little bugger.
Roran closed his eyes and looked up to the overhead to count to 10 like anger management had taught him to do.
So, you report a drink dispenser broken and what? Immediately go back and get your tools to work on it?
Hell, that'd be silly. I carry them around me all the time. Former main tech myself. Feeling ache without them, you know.
He stuttered, looking around for his out. Roran was about to respond when a woman ambled up behind him, wrapped her arms around his shoulder.
See, hon? Told you couldn't fix it. It was an electrical problem.
She smiled to her man, then roared,
Oh, hey, sweetie. Are calicos really as wild as they say?
Roran disentangled himself from the woman, careful not to bump into her memories she seemed to be forcing on him.
Look, ma'am, I don't care what you heard. If you're his husband...
Who?
Him.
He turned back to indicate the now vacant space by the drink dispenser. He turned back in confusion, and even the brown-furred lady in red had disappeared.
What the hell?
He asked, striding over to look at the broken device. After a few dummy checks, he hit the reset button on the back end. The thing bubbled to life.
Why do they always take a run and blindly past the obvious?
He asked, reporting his success and receiving a promise for an hour and a half of paid overtime. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed our amazing tale. If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe for more great adventures from the Polyverse.